Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a movie review. This movie is a horror film from Japan, Japanese language English subs, released in the year 2012, directed by Takashi Miike, and this film is called Lesson of the Evil. So Lesson of the Evil takes place in a Japanese school. You got this incredibly popular teacher who seems to be a real hit. Everyone likes him, and now this teacher is going to try and solve the problem of school bullying and some cheating in school exams. So he thinks he has the solution to this, but his popularity is going to diminish when students in this school start to realise that his old school that he used to work at had some problems with it that they believe was directly linked with him. So they believe that he's not who he says he is, and in fact he is actually quite a danger. So the more they uncover the truth, the more they realise that this guy has a plan that is going to end in a very bloody climax. So what that bloody climax is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Lesson of the Evil. Takashi Miike, he is an absolutely prolific filmmaker, and he's a very well-known filmmaker, and for that reason I really wanted to see what he could deliver in Lesson of the Evil. Now the problem with modern Takashi Miike is the fact that he's making way too many films and that he can't really concentrate on one particular project, so they feel very empty, they feel very lazy, and it's just not what you want from a legendary filmmaker. So the films of his, the classic films of his, Audition, Ichi the Killer, all those movies that really gained the name for himself, it felt like they had so much more attention onto them. So I think he's just making way too many films, and that was my initial skepticism of Lesson of the Evil. But after seeing the trailer and reading about it and seeing some of the reviews, I had a lot of expectation, because I really enjoyed the last film I watched of his called Over Your Dead Body, which was more recent than this film, but that actually felt like old Takashi Miike. So I had the hopes, but I also had skepticism coming into Lesson of the Evil, and unfortunately I feel that this movie didn't really live up to the expectation I wanted it to. But having said that, it doesn't come without its positives, because I thought the last 30 to 40 minutes was absolutely brilliant, and it captures exactly what Takashi Miike is all about. Now basically what this director is all about, if you've been living under a rock and you don't know who this guy is, he is a master of provoking an audience. He's a master of taking taboo subjects and making fun of them. So it's going to upset a lot of people, it's going to insult a lot of people, offend a lot of people, but that's exactly what you want from a director like this. He really does bring out the worst in the viewer. He actually makes you laugh at despicable acts of violence, and he raises the question as to why do we find what is actually going on funny, and it's just the way that he does it, and you can disconnect yourself from reality, and that's ultimately the beauty of film, in that some people take film too seriously. But the Takashi Miike films, although they're very disturbing, there is that slight elevation of caricature that actually allows you to enjoy what's going on. So he's a very strange filmmaker in that in reality we wouldn't laugh at these things, but in film we can actually laugh at them, and I think it understands what film is all about. Film is all about fantasy. Film is about where violence belongs, and I think that Takashi Miike really revels in this, and he actually sticks his middle finger up to the people who are very sensitive, who are very politically correct, and he says, no, I don't care what you think, I'm going to make films my way. And so for a filmmaker to do this, you really have to applaud him, and that's ultimately why Takashi Miike is as popular as he is. So Lesson of the Evil doesn't pull any punches, doesn't make apologies, so if you are very sensitive and you are very touchy about the subject of schooling, especially in the United States recently, then this movie laughs at that. And so it is incredibly provocative, and I think as far as provocation is concerned, it's probably one of his most provocative films in a very long time. So I really appreciated that element to it. So you've also got some larger-than-life characters. It actually feels like an anime or a manga based on a manga. Just that caricature sort of elevation where you feel like you're watching a very surreal world, and that's something Takashi Miike does in a lot of his other films. It actually feels like a nightmare, and this film had that. I also like the acting from this very popular teacher. Although he was very much exaggerated, I thought, yeah, okay, I could understand his charm, I could understand why he'd be popular, but his sudden transformation is actually quite scary, so it really does hit you on a very psychological horror and a very visual horror as well. So the last 30 to 40 minutes is a non-stop bloodbath. It is very excessive, and it's very graphic in its violence, so it doesn't, once again, it's very extreme, doesn't pull any punches, doesn't make apologies, so be very careful of that. But I also have problems with the last 30 to 40 minutes that I will go into very, very shortly. The soundtrack is there. I thought the soundtrack was very charming, and it was actually very quirky, and so it's got the ingredients for a Takashi Miike film. But I will say the biggest problem to this movie was the fact that it takes 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 9 minutes, which is way too long for this style of film. This style of film wants to be entertaining. This style of film wants to be very provocative, and it wants to actually laugh in the face of political correctness and decency. But unfortunately, the first, say, 3/4 3/4 of this movie is just filler. Because you don't connect to this world, because you feel like I can disconnect myself from this caricature character, you don't feel any realism, you don't feel any relatable quality, so you don't care about what's happening in their life. Basically, these are just lambs to the slaughter. And so because they're lambs to the slaughter, you don't care about what these students are doing in their private life, what these teachers are doing. I thought there are a lot of themes in this film that were quite dark, but those themes were never capitalised on, and so you feel that it's just treading water for a great deal of this movie, and it does outstay its welcome, but thankfully the last 30 to 40 minutes actually helps it a lot, and it does prevent it from being a complete disaster, but unfortunately it's not enough to really keep this film floating. So I don't know what it is about Asian films and 2-hour plus lengths, but I just feel that they're way too long. It feels like they've got a quota to fill, that they have to make a movie for 2 hours, so they're going to stretch it out as long as possible. I actually thought this movie would have been a lot better being an 80-minute film where you don't get so much character development but more the carnage that is actually ensuing, is because that is the reason why you'd watch this film, is because of what happens at the end. So because you've got no relatable characters, because you don't really care about the situation, you're just waiting for the impending catastrophe, you just don't feel as though that a lot of this film works. Then unfortunately the last 30 to 40 minutes, as I said, it's pure carnage, but it does get a little bit repetitive. So but about 10 minutes before the end, I thought, okay, this is going on and on and on, and it's kind of losing itself a little bit. You're desensitized to actually what's going on. So at the first, say at the start of this shocking climax, you feel, okay, whoa, he just hit me with some really graphic violence, but after a while, you do become desensitized to it, and you think, okay, it's outlasted its appeal a little bit. It's like telling a joke that's really funny at the start, but repeating it over and over, and it does lose its effect. And so unfortunately, that is the case with this film, is that the last 10, say, when you get to the last 10 minutes, you feel, okay, let's just get it going with this. You've made your point, you've been very provocative, you've been very shocking, but unfortunately now it's starting to get a little bit stale, and unfortunately by the end of the film, I just thought to myself, okay, I'm glad that's over. So it's not a terrible film by any stretch of the imagination, but unfortunately it just doesn't deliver something that is classic Takashi Miike. But if you are a fan of extreme cinema and cinema that is not afraid to upset someone, then I would say check out Lesson of the Evil. It does have its qualities, and as a result of that, I'm going to give Lesson of the Evil 2.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.